What's good, my dear language learning master? And welcome to Natural Languages and specifically to a new interview of the Language Input podcast. And today I'm having Anna from Naturlich German. Okay. And in today's interview, we're going to talk about different topics related to language learning, right? From why the traditional approach just doesn't work, right? And even my latest theory, like this is entirely mine, but I'm starting to think that grammar study actually does get in the way. So we'll talk about that, about different and useful sources of comprehensible input, about how to learn a language, how to start learning the language from scratch, and much more. So hope you enjoy this episode, and let's get right into it. Hi, Anna, and thanks for coming to the
Hi.
podcast. Yeah, I'm really, really happy to have you on.
Thank you. No, thanks for inviting me. It's my pleasure.
All right. And so first of all, for those who don't know you, just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, especially when it comes to languages, but feel free to add whatever you feel comfortable with, or whatever you feel is relevant to the episode.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so I was born in, we're going to go through the whole story. No, so I'm Anna, and I'm German. Was born in Germany, grew up in Germany. And then 6 years ago, I moved to England, where I still am now. But yeah, so my language background. So basically what I'm doing is just, I started a YouTube channel about, was it 4 months ago? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking you, but I should know this. Yeah, about 4 months ago, I started a YouTube channel. And my intention was just to provide content, comprehensible input content in German for German learners. And I came up with the idea. I mean, I was familiar with that sort of concept before because, I was familiar with other YouTube channels. I started learning Spanish last year in lockdown. That was one of my projects, one of my lockdown projects. And then I came across your channel as well and other channels. But I also teach German privately. And I'm doing my best to sort of do it in the spirit of this natural method and this comprehensible input and everything. And so that's how my YouTube channel came about, because I was desperately looking for content for my German students, German learners. And I was looking and looking and looking, and I was just never really satisfied with what I could find. Unfortunately, there's not too much for the German language out there. There's lots and lots for Spanish. So I was really sort of satisfied when I started learning Spanish, and you get all this content in, and it's really enough to actually learn the language with that. But yeah, I wasn't quite satisfied with the content, with the German content out there. And then I thought, okay, so you're sort of advertising yourself as a German teacher, teaching with this method, but what you really want is also give your students material so that they can, listen to that sort of content at home and learn the language through comprehensible input. So not just in our lessons, but also outside, because, we can't have a lesson sort of 2 hours a day each day. So I wanted to give them something to listen to. And of course, I found some sort of channels and stuff and other things, but I was like, you know what? If you can't find what you're actually looking for, but you want to give that sort of content to your students, just do it yourself. So my initial thought was just to sort of record videos at home and then send it to my students directly. But I don't know, that's just sort of, it seemed very complicated to do that. And it was easier to just upload it on YouTube so that all of my students can sort of access it. And then, you know, I don't know, it's just one thing led to another, and then it was public. Yeah. And, you know, I called this thing Natürlich German, and it was a thing, and yeah, now it's still a thing, and it's hopefully, you know, growing a little bit in the future as well. But yeah, so this is how it came about.
Nice.
I was looking for content for my students, and just started doing it myself. So I'm doing it for everyone out there, for every German learner out there who sort of appreciates that kind of content, you know, where just a native German just tries to tell a story or something else in, you know, in my language, and then sort of trying to do that for different levels as well.
Right.
So for people who basically start from scratch, and then people who are sort of, you know, beginners, they've already done a little bit, intermediate, advanced. So yeah,
cool.
That's how it happened.
Yeah, I was just thinking that that's how you started out, but then I bet you started actually liking it, like the process of creating videos and like the creative process and getting the feedback and so on. So you sort of started by accident, but then you realize that, oh my goodness, this is actually fun and rewarding, and I'm helping people, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so obviously, I mean, it's so much work behind this. So, yeah, you know this, obviously. But yeah, so if it doesn't, you know, if you don't enjoy it, and it is not this sort of, oh, this is actually really quite fun, and, you know, and if you don't have that, then you don't go through with all of that work. And I did months and months of work before I even published the channel. So yeah, it is rewarding, especially then when it goes out there and then people are actually saying, oh yes, this is actually helping, this is great. Then you're like, oh, I'm so glad this, you know, what it's for. This is what it's for.
Yeah.
So yes, it is a lot of fun. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, like in the long run, if you're not enjoying the process, it's gonna be hard. And yeah, because I mean, like the outside affirmation of people telling you how much they're enjoying it and how helpful it is, that always helps, of course, and it's always nice. But if you feel like you're doing something nice, you're helping people, you're having fun while creating the videos, it's way easier because, like you said, it takes time and work and so on. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, first of all, before I forget, everyone check it out. Check her channel out, because I'm learning German. It's helping me a lot. Like, I'm serious. It's not because she's in front of me here. But no, I mean it. I'm watching all your videos, not the advanced ones yet, because I'm not there. But yeah, like super fun cultural videos, quizzes, and other ideas. I'm really enjoying them, and they're really helping me. Like, I want to tell you that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm glad it's helping.
It is.
Yeah, because obviously it's your mother tongue, right? So you never really, you know, there's always this little sort of doubt, you know, where you're like, okay, are they going to understand that? Is it helping? Is it actually, you know, helping? You know, but yeah, I'm glad it does.
It is. And when it comes to the comprehensible input approach or idea, like, when you started teaching, did you start with comprehensible input related ideas from the get-go, or did you start with traditional classes and then realize that it wasn't working, or how was it?
So teaching full-time,
mm-hmm.
and with this method, and then learning Spanish sort of happened pretty much at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Because up until last year, I was still studying. I was still doing a course here in England. So I just sort of, I did it if you want to call it part-time. I did it a little bit part-time during my studies, and then I did, with the traditional sort of classroom, what you know from back in school.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't like super, get into it until I then graduated, and we were in this lockdown, and I started learning Spanish as well. And that was the moment when I then started looking into language acquisition, second language acquisition and how we learn or how we acquire a language. So that all of that sort of happened at the same time. So I did, I did that for, of course, teaching, because I wanted to really, be serious about it, really get into it, do it full time. And I wanted to learn Spanish. So for both things, I sort of needed to know what the most efficient way is to learn a language, or what the research says about it. So I just started looking into that, read tons and tons of research articles, followed polyglots on YouTube, obviously got familiar with your channel and other comprehensible input channels. So that all of that sort of happened at the same time. And then I, then said, okay, I'm teaching German with this method, just a bit like, how I'm trying to learn Spanish now. So
right.
That was also quite interesting, because then, of course, I had some students that also started from scratch, like I did with Spanish, pretty much from scratch. So it was, it was almost like this really nice exchange or comparison going on there as well. Okay, what works for me, what works for my students, and what's their experience. So it worked out all really nicely.
Cool. I guess that's always helpful, like when you're thinking about the way you want to teach, or the way you think is going to help students the most. And so when you're a student yourself of another language, and you realize what's actually working for you, what's actually helping you, and what's not, it's really, I think it's really important. But even I'd say it's you need to do that, because when you know what it feels like from the perspective of a student, you're gonna be more self-aware about what you need to use in order to help your students, right? Because if you started learning Spanish, and I mean you didn't, but for whatever reason you went to consciously study some grammar, and you saw that wasn't helping you, like how on earth are you gonna give your students what you yourself don't like, right? I would never think of teaching grammar to my students like the traditional conscious way. Well, first of all, because it's not going to help them. We know that. But then if I hate it myself, why would I do that to another human being, right? Just doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely.
And where do you see it on the traditional grammar approach? From the point of view, I guess if you're using comprehensible input, you totally believe in that idea. But do you think traditional grammar instruction has a role in it, or nothing at all? Or do you think it can be helpful? Do you think it cannot? What's your take on that? Tough one.
This is very, I sort of have immediately 5 different answers to this, because it's quite complex, isn't it?
Yeah.
So to make it very easy at the start, I don't think that if you're only studying grammar and you're memorizing these grammar rules, that you will acquire the language from that. I mean, that's basically what the research says about it as well, right? You sort of need language input for that. So if you're sort of only focusing on that and trying to memorize all these rules, I don't think you will get very far, at least in my experience. However, I mean, if you combine that, because I have students that say, no, I don't want that. I don't want grammar. That's why I came to you. And I say, fine, we don't need it. We can learn the language without it. Absolutely. Let's do it. but then I have other students as well who are like, oh, I'm actually quite interested in it and I actually really enjoy it. And then I say, okay, let's do it. Let's do my method plus the grammar bit because you enjoy it, because that's another big thing about it, right? Because we need to do stuff that we enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whatever the thing is we do with the language, we need to enjoy it for motivation purposes and, you know, all of that. So yeah, so obviously my students are still my students, so that means it's fine if they want to learn grammar, and we, you know, we sometimes go through some stuff as well, but because they're still my students, I'm like, well, you also need to do this, you also, you know, this is the stuff you need to listen to, or this is the book you need to read, or whatever. So I think a combination of both works fine, because it obviously doesn't I mean, if you're still doing the input thing and if you like the grammar, it doesn't hurt doing that, right? I just wouldn't prioritize it, I think. Yeah. And then the other part of your question, if it's sort of, you know, if it can help at all acquiring the language, I think so. What I find myself doing sometimes when someone's coming to me and they're really sort of starting from zero, and so we're doing this method straight from the start. You know, I'm giving them stuff to listen to. You know, I say, go familiarize yourself with these new weird sounds, and but so they're doing all of that work at home. You know, all the input, they're listening to stuff, they're reading stuff and all of that. But then sometimes in the lesson, when they're really starting from zero, then we might, you know, just say, okay, by the way, we've got 3 articles. We've got der, die, das in German, for example. And then I just, you know, if you just look, I mean, I don't ever say to them, you need to go home and study this and memorize this now. Right. But if we just sort of look at it and just sort of, you know, make a bit of sense of it, then I just sometimes find that it might speed up the whole process, because it's just sort of a little bit of support underneath with all of that listening you're doing. And, you know, so at the beginning, when I'm really starting from zero, I sometimes go through a bit of grammar, because it might just, you know, speed it up a little bit, because you might be able to make sense of what you're hearing sooner rather than later. But yeah, I mean, as I said, if someone comes to me and they're like, nope, don't like grammar, I'm like, okay. So
yeah, I think we all agree on the fact that with grammar alone, you're not going to be able to learn a language. Like, it's not going to happen.
Right.
With grammar, I mean, like traditional grammar instruction. However, and I talked about this with Ina in the previous episode, I'm totally against it. I'll tell you why. Like, because I totally understand what you're saying, but I think to me, that's just us adults trying to consciously control the process. Like, back to your example, you were talking about people starting from scratch, and I don't know, the articles in German that you talked about. The thing is, we adults, we want to consciously control the process. So we want to know when to use das, the problem is they're just 2 different processes, like the subconscious acquisition of the language and the conscious memorization or conscious studying or learning of the language. They're just 2 different processes. So what I mean is the fact that you know when, like, consciously know when to use a specific article doesn't mean that you're going to be able to produce it the right way when speaking.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to believe, and there's no research on this, it's just my personal feeling, okay? I'm actually starting to think that conscious grammar instruction actually gets in the way. This is my just a feeling, okay? Everybody, just no research, just a feeling. Because when you're learning a language through comprehensible input alone, like quote unquote, that's everything you have to rely on, right? So when you're actually going to try to speak in, the only thing that you have within you is that subconscious acquisition. So you got, if you're in a point in which you can actually communicate, you're gonna respond. You're gonna use words that come out of you like naturally without you even thinking about them, right? However, if you've been consciously learning grammar, as Stephen Krashen puts it, there's like sort of a monitor that gets in the way, that whenever you're gonna say something, there's that grammar instruction getting in the way and stopping you from speaking because you're, wait a second. I was going to say that, but the rule says it shouldn't be that way, right? So then you sort of stop to think about it, and then it actually gets in the way, and your speaking is less fluent. And that's why when people are speaking in a foreign language, you've probably noticed that a lot of people have like a broken speech with a lot of pauses. Like, you know what I mean, right? And that's because they're trying to consciously access that knowledge from conscious grammar instruction, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing is, in a real life, real time conversation, you just don't have the time to do that. You might have it if you're writing an article, because you do have the time to think about what you want to say and to recall those specific sentences or structures or articles or whatever they are, right?
Yeah.
But in real time, it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But that's my point with it.
Yeah. No, I agree in that point, definitely. Yeah, that's I think when you take it a bit too far. Yeah, so when you're really there trying to have a conversation and you're thinking about all these rules, and it just it doesn't really work well. So yeah, I think for me then, as a teacher who then does use grammar, it's about finding sort of the right balance. So I actually, you reminded me now, I find myself saying a lot to them something like, oh, but don't worry, you don't have to memorize this, you don't look at it at home, it was just now to sort of just see it.
Mm-hmm.
And just visualize it, but not like but I think most of the time we it's sort of nice that they've looked at it once, but then after that, if I've done my job well, then they're not thinking about the rules when we're done, then sort of start talking and all of that. And I think it's hard to find sort of that sweet spot, that balance, right, between okay, how much do I look at it and how much it's difficult to not start overthinking it, I think, once you've actually looked at it. So sometimes it might even be easier to just completely disregard it so that you don't ever have that in your head, right? So
that's the danger of it, like I said, because like as a student, you don't even realize it, but if you start trying to consciously learn grammar, you're learning to pay attention to form as opposed to meaning, which is the most important thing. So even if you don't want to, like, your brain is learning to pay attention to specific structures, to verb tenses, to articles, and so on, as opposed to meaning, which is the most important thing, and the way you're going to learn the language, right? But the good news is, just as kids do, like I talked about it with Ina as well. Like I'm not saying that grammar is not important. All I'm saying is we don't need to consciously study it, because we actually acquire it through comprehensible input. And let me give you a couple of examples that I always use, like one with Spanish, one with English. The first one with English is to show that consciously knowing the rules doesn't mean you're going to be able to produce them the right way. And like a quick little example with English is, from a conscious standpoint, the rule of adding an S to the third person singular is as straightforward as it gets, right? Like I want, you want, he wants, she wants. But like from consciously speaking, that's like super simple, right? Like all the conjugations are the same, but just an S at the end of the third person. And yet, you've probably noticed it when foreigners are speaking English, even people who can actually communicate in the language, they still say he want sometimes when they speak, because again, when you're speaking, you just don't have the time to think about what you want to say. It's not how the process works, right? They're just two different processes. So all that to give you an example of a super simple rule from the conscious standpoint, and everyone understands, right? And yet there are people still not using it the right way when speaking, because it's just two different processes, right? And then the second example with Spanish, now that you're learning Spanish, you might understand. There's a word that every single Spanish-speaking kid uses at the beginning, which is, I mean, the word for broken, yeah, which is, the correct word is roto, okay? But it's an irregular conjugation. This is about all the grammar I'm going to talk about in my project. Just kidding.
Yeah, that's a lot for you. I was just thinking that.
Yeah, just to give you an example. So roto means broken, but it's irregular. But that's the correct conjugation, right? So every single Spanish-speaking kid says rompido at the beginning, which is incorrect, but it would be the regular conjugation. And what that tells us is that kids from comprehensible input and other examples, like from beber, bebido, from comer, comido, etc., the language mechanism in their brains develops the language rule without having to consciously study it, right? So their mechanism thinks, okay, romper, rompido, right? So it's like the language mechanism understands or creates the rule itself without needing to consciously study it, right? Yeah. That's why they all say rompido, right? And then again, when what they need in order to get it right is to hear the right word in context many times. You know, if their parents use roto in context many times, eventually they're going to be able to say the right word, right? And I'm sure you can think of many examples like that with German, of course, but with any language.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally get where you're coming from. Yeah, I mean, that's why, most people teach with that method, right? So, yeah, I think when someone comes to me, like a student, and they say, okay, I don't want grammar, I think that's always one of the most exciting moments as well, because then okay, get really into this and see how far we can get here. And yeah, it's super exciting. Yeah, I mean, I myself haven't done grammar for Spanish, and so far it's been working fine. So, yeah, I mean, if you don't want it, you don't need to. Yeah, but yeah, that was another point I just remembered as well, because yeah, I think if you're sort of really serious about this, like for example, you're very interested in languages and you're taking the whole process really serious, and you're very keen and you're always trying to, find the best way. And you have found that this is the best way for you, or, in general, then yeah, that's absolutely great. But then you've got like, just like coming back to it's just my personal experience again with my students, because a lot of them, they're not coming from the same background or the same position they're in. So they just might, they might just say, okay, I need to learn German because my wife's got a job there and I'm moving there now. So they're coming from a completely different background. So they might have a different motivation and attitude towards it. And then they're like, okay, right. So, okay, this sounds sort of plausible, as you were describing with the two different processes and all of that. Great. But actually, I'm sort of, I'm not too into languages. So if it's like not the most efficient way now, or if we could just, if you could just tell me what daddy does means, also fine. Right. So I think that makes a big difference as well. So how committed are you to this whole process?
Right.
So yeah. And, I was I don't speak as many languages as you do, but I was probably sort of quite committed when I started learning Spanish last year, because it was in the middle of lockdown, and you have to have something that you're really committed to, because there wasn't much else. So yeah, and yeah, so that's why I maybe took it more serious than I would have if I would start now, or if I would have started 2 years ago. So my approach was a little bit different as well. Well, I was like, okay, you're not doing grammar, you're doing just exactly, what you sort of found out through the research or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, I get that. It's just that there's a lot of people who want to learn a language for more practical reasons, let's call it, right? Right. They found a job somewhere, or they want to move to a different country, things like that. And usually they're looking for a shortcut, or for, right, which I understand. I get it. But spoiler alert, there's no shortcut to learning a language. And that's actually great news in my view. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is, I just, like, the reason why I'm putting out so much content, and I'm starting with these interviews, because I think they're really helpful, because I'm coming from a place of gratitude. Like, I mean it. Like, I wish people could be in my head like 10 years ago, when I didn't know about all this and I was trying to learn English, and believe it or not, I just couldn't speak the language. I'm totally serious, because right away, most people, when I tell them that, I speak 7 languages, I'm learning others, they immediately think, okay, you're talented, or you're reasons like that, right? And I just wish people could be in my head for just a minute, like 10 minutes ago, 10 years ago, like, because there's such a difference between trying to learn a language the traditional way, which is never worked, as opposed to just enjoying the whole process every single day, watching videos like yours, reading, talking with people from different countries, getting to discover new things about new cultures, new countries. It's just, it's like day and night, like, completely. So that's why I really, besides me enjoying the process, which I do, I also want to help as many people as possible in that regard, because I've seen both sides of it, and it's just day and night, day and night. And I believe, like, we cannot, like, like, the last thing, like, I believe we all have the potential to learn any language. I do. Obviously, being passionate about languages as I am, that's always going to help, right? Because I'm going to be more patient, and I'm not going to look for shortcuts and things of that nature. But potentially, we can all learn any language when joining the process. I'm convinced, because it already worked for us at least once with our native language, right? Yeah, sorry, you're going to say something.
Yes, right. I had, so while we were talking earlier, I had that thought come to my mind as well, that actually, if someone would have told me, well, they basically did, I mean, in the research papers, they told me, you don't have to learn grammar. All you need to do is sit back, enjoy the process, watch some videos, read some nice books, and you can acquire the language from that. So isn't that a really sort of relieving feeling as well, right? You just, I get that some people are like, okay, I actually do enjoy grammar, but if, someone tells you, actually, all you need to do is watch videos with stuff that you're actually interested in as well, or, funny videos or whatever, and you will acquire the language from that. So you actually just have to enjoy yourself. And you know, that's actually quite nice and relieving.
It's amazing.
Yes, right. The thing is just, I have to sort of, there are, you know, a couple students who are like, okay, I'm really into this method and I'm so excited. Actually, most of the students are like, okay, I'm really excited for this. But for most of them, it's also really difficult at first if this is all very new to them and they haven't tried it out themselves first, like you and me, you know, we know it's working, so we know all of these, we know what the process is like, and we know how rewarding this method is as well. I think it's much more rewarding than back in school when you had to memorize grammar. You don't ever get like these little success moments or these rewarding moments along the way, which you get with this method. But anyway, if you've never had that and it's all new to you, then even if they're excited about this new method and this new process, it's hard for them to first trust in it. So yeah, I think they have to, you know, do it for a while and then see where it can take them and how rewarding it is, and then you can let go. You can let go more and more, you can relax, and you can actually enjoy the process, and you then stop thinking about it as well. My students at the start just have so many questions, which I love, but they are just thinking so much about the whole process, which is good because it's not just you know, learning the language, but it's about we also learn how to learn a language, right? So they're thinking a lot about the process, and they're concerned, oh, do I need to do that, do I need to do this? But you know, the more you just stick with it and the more you sort of find your own rhythm with it as well, and you realize how it's working, when it's working, and you just, you know, get a bit of experience with it, then the more they sort of relax and they're like, okay, this is great, this is working, all I really need to do is watch some nice videos. So yeah, I think it's it's relieving, and it's a great sort of fun, enjoyable and rewarding method.
Yeah, absolutely. It is, yeah, we're all used to the traditional approach because that's what we got in schools throughout the whole education system. So it does, I mean, it's almost like you don't believe it at first, right? No, it can't be this easy. I mean, it's right. Easy, quote unquote, you know. But yeah, it just, and then the thing is with, like, most people lack patience. Again, back to it, because they want results as quickly as possible, right? And with the traditional grammar approach, you do get that feeling of accomplishing a new, I don't know, a new level or a new lesson, whatever. We all know we all know what that leads to, right? But it's more measurable. You do get that feeling. But anyway.
Yeah. It's more visible, just, you know, because you are literally just following a structure.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're just sort of left on your own and you're just like, okay, how much am I going to watch now? And, you know, where's this going to lead? What am I going to watch? It's, you know, you can feel a bit lost at the start.
Right.
So I think it looks like you're getting somewhere, but I mean, we know that actually if you were just to spend that time listening and reading, you would get further. And eventually, you know, actually notice the process as well. But really? Yeah, it's hard at the beginning. I totally get it.
Yeah.
But the sort of visual going from A to B to C that you get with learning grammar, it's not as rewarding as, you know, the little sort of moments that you have when you go through with the sort of natural method, because you just, I mean, the acquiring, as you said earlier, it's that sort of mostly happens subconsciously as well, right? So it's really hard to detect that anyway. But
Mhm.
there comes a point where you just suddenly realize, oh, actually, if I look back at it, and just a few months ago, I watched this video and I just sort of accidentally came across that again, and I couldn't understand a thing. There was maybe one or two words I picked up, and now I can almost, properly follow it. And then you realize how much has actually happened in those few months. And then these rewarding moments, I think they feel much bigger and better than the rewarding moments you would have with grammar, or the success moments.
You understand more and more every time. It's just the feeling of being able to understand more and more complex resources and more interesting at the same time. It's just amazing, and it's going to happen. The thing also is it just takes time to be able to start communicating. It's the way it works in our brain. So, again, getting back to the lack of patience, right? But anyway, so I want to, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to add, I made it maybe sound like, because I said a few times, oh, it's super easy. You just need to sit back and relax. It is that in a way, but also we mustn't forget that it takes a lot of time. And, if you just watch one 10-minute video each day, how far are you going to get? But so, what I just maybe also need to mention is you need hours and hours and hours of this input. So it doesn't just come with a few videos. You're not going to see a difference with a few videos, but you need to really spend time on it and just get hours and hours and hours of input in reading and listening. So
right.
Just adding that.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was going to ask you about your Spanish journey. Like, where are you? Like, what are you doing now? Are you watching videos still, or where are you at?
Yeah. I'm watching videos on YouTube as much as I can. I've now sort of got to a point where I'm not super limited anymore to a specific level, which means there's a wider range of sort of topics that you can watch as well, which is great. So exactly. So you can just watch more stuff that sort of is, really interests you, which I enjoy. So I'm watching, all sorts of different levels now, because I'm more focusing on what I'm enjoying, which is actually quite nice. So sometimes there would be a beginner video because I like the topic, or sometimes there would be an advanced video because I like the topic. But mixing that up is quite nice. And I got to a point where I'm not absolutely frustrated anymore when I watch a native Spanish series on Netflix. Because a long time, a few months back or whatever it was, I wanted to watch Money Heist, right? Because I just really like that series. But oh my God, so I was like, okay, you do your Spanish practice in the morning or afternoon or whatever, but when you then the little bit of TV before you go to bed, you just watch it. You don't obviously count it as your Spanish practice, but you just watch it because you want to watch the series, and you're going to try it in Spanish with subtitles. But a few months back I was like, no, not happening. This is just not happening. But now I didn't actually go back to this series because I think it's quite advanced, but I sort of watch other native series now. Of course, it's still like very, very hard. I'm still using subtitles for this. I don't use subtitles when I watch videos and all of that. But it's, as I said, I got to a point where it's not absolutely frustrating anymore. So I'm enjoying native series now, which is great as well. And I've been reading Harry Potter. Nice. And I love Harry Potter. So this was a great moment for me when I first opened the book and I read through the first sort of few pages, and I was like, I can actually understand this. I can understand one of my favorite books. Maybe it takes long, and you have to really sort of focus, and it's still quite hard, but it's enjoyable because I enjoy Harry Potter. So that was, yeah, I remember that very well when I read the first few pages, because that was just so rewarding. It was so nice, that feeling. And yeah, so I've read Harry Potter. I moved on to this book here, which is a lot harder.
Oh, Julio Verne. 5 semanas en globo.
Yes, it's good. I bought that at Gran Canaria, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, so reading, watching videos, watching native series now, and all these like little things that you do. For example, changing your phone to Spanish, and then by the way, Google Maps is then also in Spanish, and when you're driving in your car and it suddenly goes, you don't expect it, and suddenly in Spanish it goes, please turn left, and you're like, which one's left again? Not quite like that, but
you're driving left in the UK, right? So it's a mess. Yeah, okay.
Yes, well, that on top as well. Yeah, so I had to get used to driving on the left-hand side and being navigated by a Spanish woman. That was great. It's fine now, but at the very start, because I just sort of, I swapped my phone to Spanish quite early on, and I didn't really think about it because I was like, it's not a big deal. But then I started driving. I was like, oh yeah, this auto changes. So that was quite funny.
Yeah.
So these little things like, reading, I don't know, a news article here and reading something on your phone there, and all of these little things, everything that just gets input in.
Yeah.
And I do crosstalk with people as well. So I meet with Spanish people who want to learn German, and then I do crosstalk, and that is probably, it might even be the best thing out of the entire practice thing, because why do we learn a language? We want to communicate with people, and if you have someone you want to communicate with, and I had that feedback from my students as well, they're like, okay, now I've actually got someone, I want to talk to you, I want to talk to this native German girl. And then that is such a big motivation thing.
Yeah.
If you've got someone you want to talk to, then and you want to communicate with, that's a big deal.
Right.
Yeah,
and then you're both using your native languages, so you're both listening to your target language all the time, and especially at the beginning when you're not ready to start communicating in the target language yet, you don't feel that pressure because you're going to reply in your own native language, which takes takes that stress out of the equation. That feeling of communicating in a foreign language and listening to a native speaker, but not really listening because you're in your head, you're trying to build the next sentence you're going to say, right?
Exactly.
And surprisingly, you're not paying as much attention to the other person, and you don't understand. So that's totally out of the picture in crosstalk, like you said.
Exactly.
So I've done it with several languages, and it's great. Yeah. And it's a real life conversation, like you said. So it's totally natural and rewarding once again. And you can both adjust to the other person's needs. You can slow down a little bit if necessary. You can use gestures or whatever it takes, pictures. It just it's like it's there near the top of the most interesting resources. Totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And and you're not limited to talking about basic stuff that you can produce in the target language yourself.
Right.
So you don't have to talk about
you're using your own, right.
Yeah, because then you can just have as you said, a completely normal conversation, and you don't have to talk about the bloody weather again, because that's the only thing you can talk about. You know, you can just talk about anything, just have a very normal conversation, and while getting that input in, that natural input. So, yeah.
Bloody water, yeah.
Yeah, motivation.
Right. Yeah. And any language that you'd like to learn in the future, or what's next, or
Oof.
didn't think about it yet?
I mean, Spanish is of course my priority now. But I was actually thinking, because I had French in school, and I was back then I was super excited to learn French, but then the whole school system and, you know, the approach and everything ruined it a bit for me. But now that I've seen the benefits with Spanish, and I have actually watched some videos on Alice's channel. Alice does comprehensible input videos for French.
It's IEL, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I mean, I haven't done any French since school because I was just so, you know, it was just so ruined. I was so fed up with it that, you know, it didn't work. So I've really no contact with the language whatsoever. But then I watched some of her videos last year, and I was so surprised by how much I could still understand. And how much I could, you know, follow and everything, by actually only doing school French, and maybe watching a film here and there back then, but then having a break from it for so long, and then, you know, coming back to it, and I could, you know, she's doing it really well as well, her stories and everything, and, you know, it was really easy to follow, and I sort of suddenly remembered all these vocabulary again and everything. So that's sort of yeah, so I just sort of thought, okay, actually, wouldn't that be quite nice? Once I've done Spanish, wouldn't that be nice to sort of come back to French and sort of get this excitement back that I had back in school that sort of then was a bit ruined, and, you know, try that again. So I think maybe after Spanish, it would be French. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's actually, you just reminded me, like, that's actually a huge point. The fact that you stopped learning French because you were fed up with it, right? It is the amount of people giving up on languages because of the traditional grammar approach. It is unbelievable. I mean, and I perfectly understand. It makes sense. You know, it's a hard process. You don't see any results. You don't get to actually communicate in the language. It's like, you know, I even felt it myself. The thing is, I'm so passionate about languages that I just kept trying. I don't know why, to be honest. But I totally get it. And that's also why I want to talk about these topics and about these things, because there's so many people giving up on languages because of the traditional grammar process, because that's the only thing they know, because that's the only thing we were taught, right? And it shouldn't be that way, because again, you can actually have a lot of fun and truly learn the language, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you were to start with French again, or any language from scratch, you start watching videos on YouTube from teachers. That'll be your go-to resource for if you're starting from scratch.
Yeah. I think the first thing I would do is just look through the whole of the internet, looking for resources. Yeah, comprehensible input resources, and then start from there. Yeah,
because that's the thing, when you're starting from scratch, there's like that initial period in which you can't really understand things for yourself, meaning even cartoons and easy stuff. So you do need someone who creates videos in a way that is comprehensible even for complete beginners, right? Like just like you're doing with your complete beginners videos, right? because even the most simple resources, like again, like cartoons or comic books or things like that,
so hard.
They're not comprehensible yet because you're starting from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you do need that. That's also why I think like a lot of people lack patience at the beginning, because at the beginning you're not really there yet. You can't really listen to the language for a longer period every day on your own, because you do need the outside help, right? But once you get to a point in which cartoons start being comprehensible, you can do that on your own ages. Then it's way easier, because you start, like you said, understanding documentaries or even series again. And when you get to that point, those resources, you were actually enjoying them in your own native language before. So there's no effort required whatsoever in that process when you get to that point, right? So I do understand that first period can be a little bit more challenging because of it.
Yeah.
But fortunately, recently there are more and more teachers uploading videos of their own native languages. And obviously, if you learn Spanish, you're going to have more resources than if you learn in Swahili,
right?
For example, right?
But, exactly.
We'll get there.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll have sort of material of a lot more languages in the future. But yeah, I agree. My experience with Spanish as well. So honestly, all I did was watching videos, like the super beginner videos, if I could find them. That's all I did at the start, and I basically started from scratch. And it was tough, because you can't, as you also just said, it was because you're new to the process. You're just sitting there and you're like, I have no idea if this is working. What am I doing? But I stuck with it, and I just kept watching these very, very beginner videos. And then, you're really like, I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. You're really there like, what the bloody hell am I doing? Is this working? But you just watch more and more and more of these. And at some point, something happens. You just start sort of, you're maybe more able to sort of detect more words in, because at the beginning it's just noise, right?
Yeah.
Just noise. But the more you watch and the more you familiarize yourself with the language and the new sounds, you start sort of detect more little words in between, and you can distinguish them. And then suddenly you just keep watching, you stick to it, and then suddenly you find yourself moving up to the next level. And it's not super beginner anymore, but now it's beginner, and you can follow them, sort of. So at the beginning, really hard, because also it's very exhausting. If you have a 10-minute video, 10 minutes of just noise, that can be exhausting, and you need to sort of, you're really trying to focus, and your mind just drifts off as well if it's just noise at the start. I mean, later on as well, it also drifts off, but it's particularly hard at the beginning, and it drifts off, and then you're like, no, hang on, focus, you really need to focus. What is he saying? Oh my god. So it is exhausting above everything else as well. So I think I remember sort of looking for 5-minute videos, because I couldn't take more at the time. And like a 10-15-minute video would be quite exhausting. So, but that's at the very, very start. I think you overcome that fairly quickly, sort of, but you just have to stick with it and just watch. And don't lose motivation. Don't be too frustrated if you maybe are a bit lost, you don't really know what you're doing. And if you just stick with it, you will see the results sooner rather than later, or step by step.
And you'll understand more and more every day, and you'll
Yeah.
get to more and more complex resources and interesting, and eventually
Yeah.
you're going to start communicating. It's just going to happen. It's a natural consequence, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely what happened with my students as well.
Yeah.
Just sort of sticking with it, because there they've got a person who tells them as well, just stick with it. So there they've got that, so they can't escape, so they just sticking with it, and then eventually, yeah, it just happened naturally with them. They just naturally started communicating. At the beginning, just very basic phrases, but obviously they got more and more and more. And another thing I should say, they don't learn the basic phrase, they don't listen to the basic phrases, and then at the same time say the basic phrases. They listen to basic phrases hours and hours and hours and hours. Then they can understand that really well. Then they move on. Then they watch more advanced stuff, listen for that for hours and hours and hours, and they move on. Their listening comprehension moves on, and then they start saying these basic phrases naturally. Right. So your sort of listening comprehension is, I think, always on a higher level than your production level, what you're able to produce. But the higher this sort of goes, the higher this goes as well, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah. So, but the more they stick with it, and the more they comprehension sort of develops, and the more they speak then as well. So, and that happened naturally for them. They just, they don't think about grammar or whatever, or even what they listen to. It just comes out. And then the really nice thing is also because everyone does mistakes. So when they do mistakes, make mistakes at the beginning, they're like, hang on, wait a second, that didn't feel right. And then they're correcting themselves, and then they say it correctly, and then I'm like, there you go, don't need to say anything. It sounded weird, it sounded wrong, so you're correcting yourself, and it's great.
You through comprehensible input, you develop like a feeling of correctness that is independent of conscious study. So that's when you probably feel that with your students, certainly, but when someone speaks in your language, like a foreign person speaks in your language, and they make a mistake, sometimes you can really explain what rule was broken or what the mistake was exactly, but it just doesn't sound right in your mind, right? It's like, or even you're looking for, you're speaking with a fellow German, and you just can't remember a specific word or a specific structure for whatever reason, and you try one and it's like, it doesn't sound right. No, this is not the way, and that's independent. You get that through comprehensible input as well, right? And and the last thing is, back to your example, is like input is the cause of your acquisition and output is the consequence. So it's always going to be ahead. And again, if you look at kids, when they're 1 year old, they don't say a single word yet, but they understand a lot. It's just how the process works in our brain, in our minds, Input is the cause, output is the consequence. It's really that simple, quote unquote. So
and it's exactly. And as you say, that's the level there. That's the case. That's always the case on any level. So if you're starting from scratch, if you're beginner, if you're intermediate, I can certainly understand more English that I can produce myself. So I think that is always the case. No matter what level you're at.
Even if in your own native language, if you read like a really formal article or whatever, you understand all the words, but you don't use them yourself, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But there was one last point I wanted to make. I forgot. You were talking about that it's always going to be ahead. Oh, I totally forgot.
Yeah, moving sort of parallelly, but
what was it? Anyway.
It might come back to you.
Yeah, probably later. No worries, no worries.
Tonight you're like, oh, Anna, I just remembered. And then I get an email being like, oh, this happened.
No, it's actually going to happen like 5 minutes after we're done.
Yeah, probably.
Not even tonight. Anyway. And yeah, like the last question that I had in mind. So we've talked about crosstalk, we've talked about YouTube videos. Is there any, let's call it, unconventional source of comprehensible input you're using that you think is helpful? Like, let me give you an example. Like, for example, like my friend Ina from Comprehensible Russian, who I had on the podcast the previous episode, she made 2-3 videos of her cooking typical Russian recipe, right? And I've seen that cooking videos are really interesting because they're super comprehensible, because, you know, here are the onions, here are the potatoes, you chop the onions, so you actually see the action of what people are saying. So I find that they're really useful. So I don't know if cooking channels, obviously you need someone who really explains everything they're doing, but I think it's like a source, like an unconventional source of comprehensible input that I really enjoy, and it's really helpful. So I don't know if there's any similar idea that you came across, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, when I get new students, then I ask them, okay, so what stuff are you interested in? Mm-hmm. And then if they say, oh, I'm into fitness, or I'm into baking, or I'm into gardening, then I go and look for stuff that is sort of, well, it depends on what their level is, right? But then I go and look for stuff that, you know, I look for native Germans who have a cooking or baking channel.
Right.
I give them a German website with German recipes. So when you go and cook, use a German recipe. So gardening I had, which was it's the newest thing. So I looked for a gardening channel, which is also quite, you know, you're also just sort of describing what you're doing and everything, which is quite nice. Yep. All sorts. It just depends on what they're interested in always. I myself have done something funny. So we had a very long lockdown in England. Okay. So basically, I mean, last year a long one, but especially this year, basically, I mean, almost 6 months at the beginning of this year, and everything was shut. The gyms were shut, which is not great for me because I love going to the gym. So what I did was sort of working out in my living room right here, had my TV on, and I had a very successful, actually, YouTube channel, a Spanish girl, doing fitness videos.
Patty Jordan?
Yes. Yes, I think that, is it called? Gym.
I don't remember the channel's name, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's her name, yeah. Yep. Yeah, I love her. She's great. So there's a lot, I mean, that was super comprehensible input, because, you know, she's like, okay, now up, and now 8 to the side, and now we're doing this, and now, you know, she's got dancing and workout videos with sort of weights and stuff. So it was all very sort of descriptive. And I learned a lot of sort of motivational phrases in Spanish. I found quite funny.
Vamos.
Yeah. So that was quite funny. So that was great. So yeah, I listened to her for an hour each day during the whole of lockdown, which I thought was great. And I always sort of tell my students to do that as well. I'm like, okay, stuff that you would normally do in your native language, if it's cooking with a recipe or whatever, just try doing that in German, and, you know, you will automatically get more input in, and it's enjoyable as well, because you're doing stuff that you're really interested in. So I would have been there in my living room every night anyway, training, working out or whatever. You might as well do it in Spanish while you're learning Spanish. You know, and it was super fun. I really enjoyed it.
And those ideas, they also have that sort of descriptive visual component that you're actually seeing the action while she's speaking. So that's helpful. Whether it's baking, working out. If you're interested in quantum physics, it might be a little more complicated, right?
Exactly.
But like simpler things, and where you actually get to see the action at the same time, that really helps. Like exactly. I've talked about sports a lot. You probably need to be a little bit ahead when it comes to how much you can understand, but because the commentator is actually explaining what's going on the pitch or the court or whatever it is, it helps you connect the ideas or the sounds of the language with the actual action, the simultaneous.
I think that's why so many people like it as well, to play video games in their target language, don't they? I mean, I'm not super into it, but I would do that as well. If I was playing video games, I would do that in Spanish.
Comprehensible, and you enjoy it. Boom. Yes. You're off you go. Off you go.
Through the roof. No, exactly. It can be quite an enjoyable process, the whole thing, can't it?
Once you get past that initial stage, then, like I said, off you go. Because that initial stage, you really depend on others creating content or a teacher, right?
Yes, that's true. And I guess if you want to learn a language where you can't really find material online, then I guess as you said, maybe with a teacher who can then sort of talk at you. But there are ways to get the input in and to find materials and stuff.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So I think we're good for today's episode, Anna. So it was really nice, really nice. It's
wasn't it?
I'm actually
thanks so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
No worries. I'm actually loving this format, because we get to talk about different things. I get new ideas from other people, and the audience is getting new ideas, which is the most important thing. And
that's right.
So it's actually quite good. I loved it. So
great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna, for coming on, and we'll be in touch, and thank you. I'll see you everyone in the next episode. And of course, here on YouTube or whatever you're listening to it, if you can leave your comments down below, feel free to ask us any question, any comments, whatever. We'll appreciate it. All right. So thank you again, Anna, and have a good day.
And you.
Bye-bye.